Farai Mupfunya. Oh, sorry. Oh, mistakes are common, right? Mistakes are common. All right, fine. From Culture Fund of Zimbabwe, Mr. Farai Mupfunya. Mr. Farai msazondinyima funding. Thank you so much. The funding is coming.
Baba, chikandamina wechishanu wakaisa paseri panapa. Tinewe kukudza. Maneru shamaridze LitFest. Maneru director LitFest. Maneru shamaridze LitFest of Scotland, Ghana, Mozambique, United States. Maneru vanyori, creatives. Maneru vamwe vabhigwa vari kupoza vari kumashure kubo. Maneru vanhu vese vanofarira literature. We are joy is the theme. I was going to say, but excuse the pun. I meant to say, my name is Farai, which is we are joy, right? Literature is not an area that I'm an expert in. So when I was invited by Chirukure to come and say a few words, the obvious thing I say is, why do you want an administrator of the arts with a background in engineering and business to come and speak in front of people who are more learned about literature? And Chiri said to me that the whole purpose is for you to perhaps come and engage everyone on why literature, correct? And I said, perhaps the good thing is that because it's you and you've been doing it for 9 years, and I can come and share with whoever is there a few, thoughts about why literature is important. And what came to mind when I was talking to Chirukure, and I think the first time I was talking to him, is just come back from his home village in Gotu, where he had helped open a library in the village where he grew up and where his parents were teachers, and they named, I think, the library in honor of them. And I said to myself, there's a World Cup going on, and everyone has got things to do, and there are going to obviously be some people, right, who will, come and be with us this evening. There may be Saudi Arabians who decide that they want to come and celebrate with us this evening. Or they could be Germans who just lost and come here. Or could be any other team. But what came to mind for me is that we all have things to do, right? And I got reminded of literature by an African, and many of you will know, who said that we come here not because we don't have things to do, we come here not because we don't have televisions to watch, we don't have books to read in our own homes, we don't have wine and food to drink in our houses. But we come here together because it's good for us to come and tell stories about humanity together. That's wow, true, right? Thank you. And, I think that's what my starting point was. First of all, that LitFest, what it has done and what it will do in the next few days. And I saw that with all the youngsters who performed earlier, is a question I asked myself, why art is important and why culture is important. it's because it all matters when it comes from the area that you live in. It has to matter, it has to come from the people who are living the lives. And therefore, LitFest Harare has got to be literature that's anchored in the youngsters you saw here, in the poets, the performing poets that you see here. Now, from tomorrow and the day after, people will talk more sophisticated notions of literature and the reasons why maybe style, idioms, idiosyncrasies, and nuances of literature may be good literature and bad literature. That's not what I'm here for. What I'm here for is to engage you in why it is important for human beings to tell stories about one another. Now, you can tell the stories by writing them, you can tell the stories by saying them out, you can tell the stories by singing them, you can tell stories by dancing them. Correct? But what is important, I think, and why we are all here is to understand that if we did not have the ability to do that, what would make the difference between us and other species? And if we are doing it in exactly the same way, what would make Zimbabweans therefore different from English, Scots, it could be English living in Scotland, or Ghanaians, or Mozambicans, or Americans, right? The only thing that makes it Zimbabwean is that it's the human condition and the lived experiences of Zimbabweans. And that came out of what we saw earlier. The vocabulary, the manner in which we perform could be very different from where our friends come from, but that's us. And therefore, I'm very keen to find out what the discussions from tomorrow will be around. Will they be around what is good literature versus bad literature? Is there such thing as good literature and bad literature? In my own case, when I was looking, I pulled out a few books from what appetite of literature was fed when I was a teenager, perhaps sort of this age. And I said to myself, okay, there was Pride and Prejudice, there was Julius Caesar, there was Animal Farm, and I said, what condition of the lived life that I was living at the time had it anything to do with Julius Caesar, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen, and George Orwell's Animal Farm of 1994 or 84? I said to myself, that is perhaps why LitFest has to happen. Because all the things that are embedded in me, and some of the things I can even recite, a paragraph from Julius Caesar or Animal Farm or Pride and Prejudice, what was the intention? What was it trying to do? Was it trying to make me relate to other Zimbabweans and other people as a confident young African living the African way of life? And perhaps these are the questions of the next few days. Now, when you look at it this way, I pulled out from house library these books from 30, 40 years ago when I was a little younger. And then I said to myself, how does this relate to a couple of other books I pulled out? Buku risina basa, nekuti rakanyorwa masikati. I had a chat with the Tinachi Muchuri, anongotichururisa nyaya dzosingwi nechivanhu. And I was saying, then I read his blog, achiti iye Tinachi Muchuri anoseka na memory chirere. He was critiquing this little book called Buku Risina Basa, Nekuti Rakanyorwa Masikati. But earlier on, I then pulled out a book that I got from Ignatius Mabasa.
Mapenzere.
Right? I cannot translate Imbwayemun. If someone can help me translate it in English, Imbwayemun.
You dog of a human.
So Ibrahim, right, is a book that I relate to more than Jane Austen's books, right? But it doesn't mean I shouldn't read other literature, because I also want to understand their worldviews, their experiences, why they write the way they do, and why they speak the way they do. But tekanzi Ibrahim Basa. Then I also was looking at a story I remember reading 2014 when Ignatius Mabasa published that book. And one of the stories, one of the little storylets, if there's a word like that, was these characters, two of them. There was a guy, I think his name was George, maybe, and a woman who's married to a very powerful man. And she is talking to this guy, and they're both naked. And they're asking one another, what is the nature of this life? What is the nature of writing? Why are writers important? The woman was asking. And then this guy, who happens to be a writer, says, oh, writers are important. Writers actually are a government within themselves. So he was saying, so I'm saying, okay, this is literature, right? But this literature is taking me into a space where this woman is like, she didn't really know. I think they were in a jail, or they could have been in a psychiatric unit of some sort, and they were having this very rational discussion and conversation. But then they were asking themselves, is this real? Are we real? Is this life real? And only the imagination of writing can take you to those kinds of spaces, to start imagining things even if you're not living them, right? And then when I also looked at Tinashe Muchuri, where last week I also met him, I'm pointing at you because you are here and you are a fantastic writer, both in the natural Shona language. And we had this discussion when we went to the Festival of Galera, so I saw Valerie Kabov here. And it was a conversation with this young man called Troy Makaza. So Troy Makaza is experimenting with a sort of a plastic that you use in bathrooms. But he's telling stories in a very abstract way, and he was telling the reasons why he chooses to use that material and chooses that kind of abstract art. Now, many of us didn't understand this art, but we just looked at it, and then it had to be explained what he was trying to say. But what he's doing is that he is a very good artist. He could actually do very figurative and expressive art, but he's choosing to express himself in a very different way, because he's saying the life I'm living in Zimbabwe as a young African man can only be expressed in the way I am expressing today. So then I had my discussion with Tinashe. I saw some writers there, and Tinashe was there, Julie, and we were speaking. And Tinashe, when I met him, I turned to Shona, because I always try to tap into his vast, reserves of Shona itself. And so I said, Tinashe, did you understand this abstract art? And he said, yeah. So I said, really? And I said, yeah. So I said, I'm struggling to understand some of the art. But then he said to me, visual arts, contemporary dance, is like poetry or some things that I write. Because I'm looking at the intention of the presenter of the art in terms of what they feel. Are they genuine? Are they revealing part of themselves? And what are they wanting us to take away from them? So I can look at things that I may not immediately understand, but I know that if the artist is genuine, they are communicating human condition. So primarily, we look at the human condition in our own environment, because art has to make sense for us here before it travels and makes sense for our friends elsewhere. So for us here, literature becomes very important. Even though we think that many people think that it's not important, it still is. And I really, really want to thank the people who have been resilient in making sure that literature still plays an important part in expressing the human condition in Zimbabwe. Now, this is the story as well. When we met at the Zimbabwe German Society, I think it was the launch of the book called African Visionaries, right? And then you had a performance with your friends there, and one of I think it was Rondo, and where you were challenging us to understand how the ingenuity of the human mind, that when the human beings started talking to one another, they got frustrated, right? And then impatience came, and then one of them invented and decided that let me just take a stone and hit this guy, maybe his head will wake up and we can start communicating. And so Chile took us the whole range of human evolution to now, or maybe let's go back to 1945 when some very clever scientists invented the atomic bomb and just said, oh, we can't talk to these Japs, so let's just drop a bomb there, right? And now we are so ingenious about how we talk to one another that we devise these methods of communicating that perhaps will see the demise of the human race if we are not careful. But literature and storytelling can bring back some of this humanity. And if I may quote, maybe some of you may know a couple of maybe international leaders for me to finish off. One of them during war, as they say, great wars in the faraway continent, no money for the arts, no money to give to people like us here. And then he was talking to his cabinet, I suppose at the time, and then one clever minister said, let's cut the budget for the arts. And then this leader said, if we cut the budget for the arts, what on earth are we fighting this war for? Some of you will know the leader from the countries that are way out there. The other leader was way out there who also was talking about what is important in countries, and this leader has a lot of things that are at their disposal. And was asked, what is important at the end of the day? And I suppose him or his speechwriter said, after all these things have been done, we've built houses, we've built skyscrapers, we have amassed all this money, what will be remembered down in history is the contribution to humanity and human spirit. Not the monies, not the skyscrapers, not the cars, not the cell phones, and so on. But the things that we are seeing here in the next few days. And how do we make those things happen? It's for people like you guys here to keep on carrying the flag and keep on talking about books and the human condition, no matter how many people pitch up. Because at some point, people will wake up and realize this is an important thing to have. I think with those words, otherwise I'll become a storyteller, which I'm not. I want to wish LitFest a very good few days of exploring the human condition and sharing and stretching our minds. And I'd like to wish the team all the success and acknowledge you and applaud you for what you've done to keep this thing going, especially where we are going as a country, and especially where the world itself is going. So well done, and wish all of you who have taken time to be here success and the ability to aspire and inspire others so that others after us will live to tell a better story. Thank you very much.